policing plans. I'm again asking for the assistance of the law-abiding public as we carry out these increased activities. As we apply pressure on the spaces in which these criminals operate, you may see strange persons turning up in your communities. Do not allow them to get comfortable in your communities. If you see something, say something. Report it to the police, call our tip line at 811, police 119 emergency, or Crime Stop at 31. Now, since the ending of the COVID-19 protocols and the return to face-to-face classes, we have taken note of some violent encounters that have become the subject of viral videos. The latest incident occurred last week at a high school in Kingston, where a female student stabbed to death another female student. The 17-year-old suspect has since been charged with the murder of the 16-year-old student. We also recall the national conversation in March this year, when a student in Trelawney was stabbed to death by another student during a dispute over a gathering. These encounters have been the source of discussions in various quarters. But for us, we have not only been intervening in, but also seeking to prevent these acts of violence. Since the start of the last academic year, the JCF, through its Community Safety and Security Branch, deployed 245 school resource officers in several key areas that were identified as potential flashpoints under the Safe School program. However, this once and again underscores a problem that I've sought to shed light on many times: the problem of our culture of violence in the resolution of interpersonal conflicts. Over 15% of the murders committed so far this year are attributed to poorly managed interpersonal conflicts. Just last night in St. Anne, we saw where a 52-year-old female pastor was stabbed to death. And at this point, we suspect that's by a relative of hers. In Port Royal, Kingston East, just this morning, a 41-year-old fisherman was mowed down with a vehicle during another dispute. The pandemic of interpersonal violence is a public health matter, and it is infecting and affecting several demographics in our society, including our children. I said it at the last press briefing, and I will say it again. We must teach our children to deal with these conflicts. As it relates to major crimes, at the end of September, major crimes were up by 3.8% when compared to this point last year. There were 86 more murders, which is a difference of 8%. Shootings are down by 6%. Rape is down by 12%. Break-ins are up by 7%, and robbery is up by 17%. However, when we examine the homicide figures more closely, a worrying trend emerges. In the month of September alone, there were 19 incidents of multiple murder, 18 doubles and a triple, amounting to 39 victims. So far this year, there have been 99 incidents of multiple murders, with victims totaling 218. We believe that this trend is reflective of the ease with which more and more criminals have been able to acquire guns and ammunition. Unlike the police, who are constrained in the use of lethal force when bystanders are around, these criminals couldn't care less who they kill, maim, or hurt. Our investigations have also revealed that in several of these incidents, there were multiple intended targets, and some who seem to be innocent bystanders are actually associated with those targets. We've been saying that if you associate with or are related to gunmen, then you're at great risk of becoming a victim of gun violence. We have also noted that in making good their escape, if challenged, gunmen will spray bullets on other persons gathered. Now, on average, the gun has been the weapon of choice in 84% of murders and 79% of robberies for more than a decade. Recently, the changes to the firearm legislation were passed in both houses of Parliament. We believe that this is a potentially game-changing modification in the laws around illegal firearms and the attendant sentencing regime. The surest indicator of whether someone is a gunman must be the fact that they have been held with an illegal gun. The new act should cause every gunman or anyone else who feels they should to think twice about being in possession of a firearm, an illegal firearm. much less using it to commit a crime. With respect to firearms, as at the end of September, we seized 584 illegal guns, an 11% increase over last year. Shotgun seizures were up by 111%, while rifle seizures were up by 58%. Pistols were up by 8% and submachine guns were up by 42%. So we are pulling in a number of guns from the streets. We continue our strategic push toward bringing the membership of the JCF closer to the 15,000 mark. Our program of recruitment continues in earnest, and we believe that at the current rates, we are on target to recruit 1,200 by the end of this fiscal year. That's 1,200 additional members. Let me take this opportunity to urge every bright, passionate, dedicated, and honest young person out there to consider a career in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. If you believe you have what it takes and you can make a contribution to serving your country, take the test, enlist with us, and be a force for good. We've also been rolling out the station records management system. That's our electronic system of keeping records. Across divisions in the corporate area, specifically the Kingston Eastern, St. Andrews Central, and St. Andrews South divisions. These divisional headquarters, CIBs, and 5 stations within these divisions are utilizing the new system. We'll continue the rollout across other stations and divisions within the coming months. Now, we are into the final quarter of the year. While some of the numbers that we track are not where we would like them to be, we remain resolute in the commitment to bring things back on track. As a high command, we are using all the human and physical resources at our disposal to disrupt and deter the activities of criminals and ultimately bring them to justice. In the coming weeks, we should receive additional mobility assets, personnel, and equipment that will be deployed across the country. With these efforts and with the new Firearms Act, we expect to see a slowing of the violence across the country. Operation Relentless 2 is being executed, and we are committed to the plan.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. At this time, we will open the floor to questions from members of the media. The first question comes from Christopher Thomas of the Gleaner. Christopher, go ahead.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon to everyone here. I want to ask, do you have stats to indicate how many persons who you have arrested on illegal firearms charges so far, or alleged involvement in gangs? How many of those will have been under the age of 18?
We do capture those stats, but we don't have it to hand. But it's not something that's difficult. If you just change to our CCU, afterwards we can give you those specific figures. But I don't have it to hand, so I don't want to say offhand.
All right, Christopher.
You get anything on that? No. Okay.
All right. Kimon Francis, also of the Gleaner.
Good afternoon.
Two quick questions. Has the matter involving the shooting death of Ernie Shaw been referred to the office of the DPP? And does Dr. Chan's recommendation that life-saving care not to be extended to alleged gunmen shot in confrontation contravene police use of force follow?
So the first one was, could you just do them one at a time? You said the first one was a question on...
We didn't hear the shooting of who?
The healthcare incident.
That matter is still under investigation. I have personally spoken to the DPP. I'm not certain it would be necessary at the conclusion of the investigation for the file to be sent to the DPP, but it is still under investigation. And I'm in contact with the commander, St. Catherine South as well.
The second one, Kimon, could you just repeat that one? We came through a little garbled, so could you just repeat that, Kimon, please?
Sure. Does Dr. Chan's recommendation that life-saving care not be extended to alleged gunmen shot in confrontations contravene the police's use of force policy?
Well, I won't agree with you that Dr. Chan, especially as a medical practitioner, said that life-saving support should not be extended to people shot, gunmen or persons shot in confrontations with the police. As a matter of fact, routinely, all the time, we extend this immediately, or as soon as it's safe to do so. We render life support to persons who are in conflict with us. We take them to hospital. We attempt to save their lives. It happens all the time. I mean, that's not only policy, but that's the practice also. I think what Dr. Chan spoke about is the deployment of ambulances, because the fact is that in most cases, we are the ones who take them to the hospital in our vehicles. So the use of force policy is consistent with our practice.
Thank you very much. Roxroy McLean, you're next. Go ahead, Roxroy. Roxroy, are you there? Okay, Ricardo Brooks.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Go ahead, Roxroy.
Good afternoon, the Commissioner and team. Good afternoon, dear colleague. My question is to Mr. Bailey. Based on your intelligence, could you state whether the rank is still active and provide an update in this investigation, first investigation?
What I will say at this time is that that matter involving the Ranko gang is still under investigation. I am aware that 2 persons were picked up sometime last week and were subject to identification parade. So there is ongoing investigation in respect to that gang.
Thank you very much. Ricardo Brooks, Nationwide, I believe that is.
Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon to members of the High Command.
Good afternoon.
Could the Commissioner or GCP Bailey say how prevalent are instances of children or teenagers being used to transport guns for gangsters? And does either gentleman have any concerns about the impact of the mandatory penalties under the new Firearms Act? Those penalties, what impact they could have on these children if they're caught with illegal guns?
Right. So obviously that is one of the things. All of the exceptions are things that were considered when dealing with the Firearms Act. There's a provision, if I remember, in the new act that speaks about persons using children in this way and attracting some very significant sentences. Now, one of the reasons why the children are used is because under the pre-existing system, nothing will happen to them if they're caught transporting the gun. And so they become the target of gangsters who say, you can do this because you're a youngster, you're not going to go to jail, you'll probably get a little probation or something, and it allows them to give it to these kids and get them involved in the firearm trade at a young age, whilst they step back and just receive the guns when it's convenient to them. Now, what this does, it now recalibrates that. And it recalibrates the decisions that not just the children, but those children's parents make when they're faced, or whoever has the firearm is faced with long sentences. And there's always the exception, but the reality is 84 to 85% of our people are being killed with guns, thousands of people year on year on year. And if we don't see this as sufficient cause to send away the people who are in possession of these firearms for long sentences, well, you know, then we'll be forever challenged, because the consequences and the responsibility that people have to take for having illegal firearms is not going to be meted out. So certainly it recalibrates the entire environment. These issues came up and were discussed, but I don't know that by putting long sentences we create a greater challenge for our youngsters, as opposed to relieving them of this burden of getting involved in the gun trade very early.
Thank you very much. Jamaica Maitland of TVJ, you're next.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. President. I have I'll go.
Jamaica, your connection is not great.
All right, I'll try to.
All right, let's try again. Stephanie Liu of the Jamaica Gleaner.
Good afternoon. I actually have two questions. The commissioner had mentioned all physical resources to tackle the crime and violence.
What?
But there's one thing we have constantly heard at portals that the
Stephanie, let's try again. The clarity is not coming through.
I believe because maybe are you hearing me okay now?
Let's try again. Go again.
As it relates to utilizing physical and human resources to tackle crime and violence. As an entity portal, we have constantly heard that dance hall is promoting crime and violence and having that negative impact on our teenagers. I want to know if there has been any need to put together a course or youth dancehall is as ambassador for the Jamaica Constabulary reach out to our younger.
All right, we're struggling to hear you clearly. Essentially, you're making a point about much has been made of dance hall and its impact on negative behavior, on violence, etc. And you're questioning whether or not the constabulary has reached out to persons in this space as ambassadors, etc. In pushing back against this. How do you want to treat that?
Yes, so we have actually hosted a number of persons, not just in dancehall, but in the music industry, including dancehall, right here in this room. As a matter of fact, we were on a path just before COVID, dealing with some of these things, and then it became a little difficult to do that as we were diverted into other things. But the value of music, the message of music, the value of our artists in supporting what we do we feel is significant. And musicians and persons in entertainment and even persons in media have influence. They influence thought, they influence the way people approach things, they influence values. So we have to look at, and as responsible people, we have to look at what the values are that we are putting forward, now there is the entertainment value of some things, but there are also questions about whether what you raise up as things to be exalted, as things to be followed, what is the example that we're setting and all of that. Now, we know that we see as part of our responsibility of working with all groups and any group of persons who are willing to make that change. But we also have to, at the same time, if you are supporting gunmen in your lyrics to kill people, then obviously, then our messaging is at cross purposes. So certainly, there are a number of artists within the dancehall genre that are seized with this and are working to balance this desire for a particular type of entertainment and their messaging to young people to keep them out of a particular lifestyle. So I think that's the long version, but the short version is yes, we engage them, and we have seen some very conscious lyrics come out of dancehall artists, and even other ones who don't necessarily, who are what you call on the borderline of where they go back and forth, can still add a voice to young people to do otherwise than go down a path that's a path that has been damaging our country and is destructive to them. So, I mean, going forward as well, we expect to do more of the engagement that we started and to see if we can bring about the change. There's no question that their lyrics have an impact. We see it with Molly, we see it with guns, we see it with the sort of things that young people start to see as good. And if those things are destructive to them and destructive to the country, then obviously as a police force, we cannot be in agreement with that. But we'll continue the conversation.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to take a question from the chat. Maisha Brody from IRFM News says, good afternoon. Videos of confrontations between the police and transport operators have been circulating on social media in recent days. What is being done to improve the relationship between both groups as well as the police and civilians at large?
Right. So we saw the videos as well. I mean, I must tell you that this idea that when the police are doing their job to enforce around this issue of public order, the behavior on the roads, and so on, and we see this resistance. The most recent one that you're probably referring to didn't start there. It was a series of actions and a chase that ended up there, and the person was arrested and charged. We see these snapshots going out, and it tells a piece of a story. We have seen that. We saw another video a little while ago of our police officers chasing somebody all through the city until they finally got them to stop. They reversed into the police car, and the person came out filming, suggesting, and saying on camera that the police are acting improperly. Fortunately, in that case, the police were filming also. Now, we also added additional body cams. Everybody doesn't have them yet, but that's part of our commitment. And so we will have more and more of our officers in them, because nothing really protects our officers in terms of the story better than them having these body cams. Now, so I think the message is, if you do that, you will be charged, and you are going to go to jail. We see not just in terms of confrontation with the police, but we saw that with the guys who were, when we were having the rains, breaking the lock to go into the gorge. Well, those people are arrested and charged. Were arrested and charged. So although you see a video, don't believe for a minute that the JSF is going to roll over, or officers are going to accept that when they're arresting somebody, if you create enough disturbance, that we're going to stop what we're doing. That is not the case. Now, people need to take note that we'll continue to act. We'll use the force required to effect the arrest. And I suggest strongly that persons who are in that process, you know you have breached, you know you have done the wrong thing, and when the police are doing their job, comply, go to the courts, get your ticket or get your summons, and end up in the court, get a lawyer, and deal with it that way, as opposed to this idea that you're going to fight off the police at each juncture. A lot of people also who come on the scene of something, who have no idea how it started, who don't know what's going on in those circumstances, are joining in to the chorus of, or have tried to assist the person who is being arrested by the police. In those cases, we have identified them through video, those same videos, and have arrested them subsequently. So this idea that this narrative that you're going to get away with it or you're going to fight the police if you choose to, don't do it. It will lead to your arrest. The other thing is, and I want to, since you raised the matter, this idea that the police are stopping somebody and you're going to drive your car, having stopped, and drive your car away and hit down a police officer. As far as I'm concerned, you're attempting to kill the police officer, and he can respond in a manner to stop himself from being killed. So when you're being stopped, stop. I'm not talking about somebody going at speeds and stop. He can't stop in time. I'm talking about a person who is in a discussion with a police officer. The police officer is in front of the car, and they decide to drive and mow them down. That is not acceptable. And the police officer or the police team that is there have to respond appropriately. So remember, you know, and this is the point. We all complain and we all want streets where there is order. We want an ordered place. Well, the order comes with being ordered. And if we are law enforcement in the country, and at the moment, we are issuing, and this is what we are required to do and are empowered to do in law. We are issuing just under 500,000 tickets a year. Now, some of the discussions that have been taking place since the new regulations is how can we enforce less? Nobody's talking about not breaching. What they're talking about is that we should take a different response. Now, if we do that, then the chaos will continue. Now, there are other aspects to this system that needs to be fixed. Because the fact that somebody can be driving around with 1,200 tickets, and they're taken to court and they're dealt with, we probably deal with 20 of those tickets. The person, depending on if it's tickets that accrue points, the person may or may not have their license suspended. Without those sorts of consequences, that your license is suspended and that the fines and you have to pay the tickets that are given to you, you'll continue to see it. Because the same person with 1,000 tickets can walk out and drive again. So these are some of the things now we are working towards with the other parts of the system to get this fixed. Because if not fixed, we will not see the change that we want, regardless of how many tickets the police issue. Now, the discussion quite often becomes a discussion around enforcement. The reason why the person is doing what they're doing is because we're not enforcing. It is not true. The reason why they're doing it is because after we've enforced, i.e. issued the ticket, they do not pay the ticket. They may not turn up for court. 30% or 40% of all of those tickets are actually paid. And the people, there are no consequences that flow from doing that. There are no consequences that the ante isn't upped as you increase your determination not to obey the law. So when you get 500 tickets, it's 500 single tickets. And so the same people are offending and reoffending, and you see them on the road, and you wonder why the police aren't doing something about it. We are doing what the law provides for us, and have been doing it. We are issuing twice the number of tickets as the highest place in the United States, but still the behavior continues. The behavior continues simply because the person can, the way the system is structured, the person can still drive with that number of tickets and can still have that number of outstanding tickets and be at large without paying them. That is the system that we need to fix.
Thank you very much. William Mitchell is online. William, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you say if there's still feedback?
Say that again?
Say that again. Can we say what?
Is there still feedback when I speak?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know earlier in his presentation, the commissioner said that the case of the drug seizure at the EMU airport is still ongoing. But could you say if the police have at least identified suspects outside of the case is ongoing?
Just to say that there's an end goal to this investigation, and we will meet it. It's ongoing, as Commissioner said earlier on. We have our targets, and at the end of the investigation, the public will be brought up to date on its result.
All right, thank you very much. I'm seeing some raised hands. They're not hands that came down previous. I'm going to check. Kimon Francis, do you have another question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Kimon.
What is the update in the matter involving Garfield Radio, who accused the policeman of pushing him over a wall in Redhills last month? Mr. Radio has been charged. What action has been taken as it relates to the officer accused?
Okay, I think that one is being handled by Indicom.
All right. Ricardo, go ahead.
I have another question, Dennis.
I'll give you another chance. Ricardo, go ahead. Okay, Jamila, go.
I heard the commissioner on the need for a realignment and a rethinking of how we engage with children who are forced to carry guns. Should we understand the commissioner to be saying that because of the situation we're experiencing as a country, he is comfortable with children who are forced to carry guns against us receiving these mandatory penalties under the Firearms Act?
Easy question to answer, no.
No, I did not say that.
Nobody would be comfortable with that.
Yes, what I was very clear on what I said about this. So just follow along with me. A number of the children who are forced or asked, or their family asks them to carry firearms, illegal firearms, on behalf of gunmen, are doing so because what they are told is that if they are caught, then they're unlikely to receive a heavy sentence. It will be a probation order or something like that. And that's what we have seen. So this is what the experience shows. And so they get incorporated because they are at less risk than the adult is to carry the firearm. Now we have to make a choice and a decision. Is it that, and I said within the new Firearms Act, I'm almost sure, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a provision and a way it was dealt with about adults causing children to be involved in the firearm trade. the illegal firearm trade, which came with significant sentencing. Now, I can't see, so to an extent, if you follow me, this will reduce, I see, the number of youngsters, certainly for those ones who are being asked to do it by their own siblings, family, and so on, are less likely to be used in this way. Within the confines of the Act, as I said, this matter arose, and I'm sure was debated both in Joint Select and in the Parliament. We are working with the laws as given to us. We as practitioners of law enforcement, see more nuance in circumstances than anyone. But what we know for sure is that if gunmen do not receive, the people in possession moving with these firearms, do not receive sentencing, long sentences, and are away from the community, they will continue to shoot people. And the information, the evidence of that is not arguable. They continue to shoot as long as they're out there. When they return, they shoot again. This is what we have seen. And this is why we have as many deaths as we've had over the last 20 years. This act, the Firearms Act changes, were requested and argued about in 2010 and before. It was argued again in 2015, 16. It has been an ongoing thing. It has been the longest piece of legislation to get going over various administrations to actually get an agreement that says if you are a gunman or you do crime with a gun in a country where so many of our people are dying with a gun, then you should, one, take responsibility for what you did, and two, that you should pay the price of carrying it. What is difficult about that to understand? I'm not sure.
Thank you, sir. Jamila Maitland has another question. Go ahead, Jamila.
Hi, good afternoon. And the name is the Agro Regional. The recently we saw because say Jamaica can arrest or
Jamila, I'm going to ask you to put your question in the chat because we're not hearing you. We're not hearing you at all. Kimon Francis, go ahead.
Commissioner, seeking clarity, is it that you agree that Dr. Chang's comments contravene police force, or it does not?
I am saying that Minister Chang's comments were not associated with that. He never said that we should not render assistance to somebody who has been shot in a conflict. He never said that. So let us take that aside. What I'm saying to you, and it very clearly, is that the police routinely, by policy and by practice, if they're in an armed conflict and shoot somebody, they take them to the hospital. That's what I'm saying.
William Mitchell.
Hi, just following up on the match in Old Harbor recently. I know at the time that the shooting was over a missing gun. Has the police made any progress since then?
We have identified suspects and they are being pursued as the investigation continues.
All right. Do we have the question from Jamila? Okay. The government in Turks and Caicos says Jamaican gangsters are responsible for a rise in crime and violence there. Is the JCF aware of the issue, she asks?
I have been speaking with the Commissioner of Police in Turks and Caicos. We've been having those discussions, and I know there are some other discussions taking place at government-to-government level. We already are working from an intelligence perspective together on this. As you say, it's early discussions, and I think that I'll leave it there for now. But as things develop, we'll certainly update on that.
The final question we'll take today is going to come from Maisha Brody of IRFM. In the chat, the question is asked, can we get some more information about the additional charge laid against Constable Noel Maitland in relation to Donnelly Donaldson's death? IRFM News learned of the charge, which is prevention of the lawful burial of a corpse today. When was the charge laid and why?
We have been working closely with the offices of the Director of Public Prosecution, and as you know, they have conduct of the matter. We prepare the file, do an investigation, and the DPP determine the charges that should be laid. And that charge was determined by the offices of the DPP.
Thank you very much, Maisha, for that question. Thank you very much to all the journalists who've put questions to us. We thank you. We look forward to reading, watching, listening to your stories on the various platforms that we have available in this very dynamic media landscape in which we exist. On behalf of all of us here at the Office of the Commissioner, my name is Dennis Brooks, and I thank you very much for joining us. Take care.